Jay Shear.
Jay Shear.
Jay Shear.
Jay Shear,
business consultant.
Jay Shear.
Jay Shear Business Consulting.
Welcome. I'm Jay Shear with Jay Shear Business Consulting. We build solid foundations for service-based businesses to grow and scale and achieve the success and results they deserve. And you've joined Business Minds Coffee Chat. The late, great Zig Ziglar said, "You can have everything in life you want if you will just help enough other people get what they want." Well, on today's episode, we're going to talk about the meaning behind this quote, shifting our focus from getting to giving value to others, the 5 laws of stratospheric success, and more. Our guest started in radio doing sports, then TV as a late-night news anchor before getting into sales. A seminar he attended by Zig Ziglar changed the trajectory of his life. Today, he's a best-selling author and Hall of Fame keynote speaker who successfully shows entrepreneurs, leaders, and sales professionals how to communicate their value and accelerate their referral business. Please welcome the man whose little story has positively impacted countless lives and businesses, Bob Burg. Bob, it's wonderful to see you. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, I got to tell you, I told you earlier how great I think your voice is. I've now pretty much decided that that maybe along with Morgan Freeman, I would want you to be the narrator of my life if my life had a narrator.
Oh my goodness, I'm honored.
As a former radio guy, I can say your voice is, man, right up there.
Oh, you are very kind. Thank you for that. So, Bob, your book, and we're going to be talking a great deal about the Go-Giver. Your book has had a substantial impact on my life. And, as I mentioned in the intro, has certainly impacted the lives of countless others. But before we get to the Go-Giver, I mentioned a little bit about your background and some things that you had done in the past. I would really love you to give us a bit more context on where your story begins before the Go-Giver, before the accolades, and before the success that you have achieved up to this point.
Well, as you mentioned, I started out in radio as a sportscaster. I then went into television news only because I couldn't find a job on TV in sports. And I figured eventually I'd work my way over into a sports broadcasting position, but it didn't happen. And so I was the late night news guy for a very small ABC affiliate in the Midwestern United States. I wasn't particularly good at it. I could read the news, and I think anyone can pretty much do that, but I certainly wasn't a journalist. And it wasn't long before I saw that television it was not going to be my career. So I like to say I graduated into sales. Now, the challenge was I had no experience in sales, no formal training in sales. And the company where I worked, it just wasn't something that they, held to be a high value. So I was pretty much on my own, and I floundered for a few months until I finally one day I found myself in a bookstore and was looking for something. I didn't realize I was looking for books on selling because I didn't realize at the time that books on selling even existed. This is 40 years ago, and that it just wasn't as prevalent. It wasn't something everyone knew, that there was sales training out there. But I did see 2 books. One was by Tom Hopkins, the other by Zig Ziglar. And I got those books. I mean, I was amazed just that those books even existed. I'm thinking, what? There's actually a way to sell? There's someone who's done this before, a proven system. I really had no idea, as silly as, as that would sound today. So I got their books and I began studying them, and every night, get home from work into the wee hours of the morning, I'd be reading and highlighting and note taking and practicing. And I just really went at it. So within a few weeks, my sales began to go through the roof. And the interesting thing is there was really no significant difference between the Bob Burg of 3 weeks ago and the Bob Burg 3 weeks later, other than I now had a methodology to follow. I had a system. And I personally define a system simply as the process of predictably achieving a goal based on a logical and specific set of how-to principles. The key being predictability. If it's been proven that by doing A, you can get the desired results of B, then you know that all you need to do is follow A and follow A, do A, and eventually you're going to get the desired result of B. So I just love that idea. Sales became a lot more fun. And I began really making a study of, along with sales, of personal development, because I began to realize that selling wasn't just about selling. It was about building yourself. It was about growing yourself. And so I started getting all the great books, the books from Og Mandino and of course, Zig's. I got his back then cassette tapes and Tom Hopkins cassette tapes. I started attending seminars whenever I could, such as Zig's, and books like How to Win Friends and Influence People and The Magic of Thinking Big and Psycho-Cybernetics and Think and Grow Rich and all the classics that we all, I'm sure, have on our bookshelves. But so that was really, I just loved it, and eventually worked my way up to sales manager of another company, and then started showing others how to do what was working for me. And as they say in the old Seinfeld episode, yada, 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 35 years later, 40 years later, whatever, here I am speaking with you.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for giving some added context around that. Greatly appreciated. I want to go back, since you brought up Zig Ziglar, I mentioned Zig in the intro as well. And that
you also, by the way, this is important. You are one of the few people who actually got that his famous quote, who quoted it correctly. Because typically people mangle that quote. It's one of the most beautiful quotes I think that has ever been spoken ever. And very few people actually go, it's a pet peeve of mine, as you can tell, to take such a magnificent quote, and most people mess it up. And you got it perfect. So thank you for doing that in honor.
Absolutely. and I feel you on that. And I remember I had the opportunity to meet Zig many years before his death. And he just, not only his magnetism, his ability to articulate just such amazing wisdom in a way that stuck. It was very sticky right through his storytelling. And like you, I was listening to tapes off so often that the tapes would break and I would have to tape them together again. And they never sounded exactly the same, but the information was there and it resonated. But what I wanted to ask you about that quote, and I'm sure you've like you or like me, you've probably heard that quote a million times. What does that quote mean to you when you break it down? It seems so simple, and it is, but it's not common practice. So
right.
Explain what that quote means to you, if you don't mind.
No, not at all. So let's look at it in a sense through the eyes of the basic premise of The Go-Giver, which of course was written years and years and many years after Zig's famous quote, and bring it back to that. Okay. So the premise of The Go-Giver, and you alluded to this earlier, is that shifting your focus, right? So taking it off of yourself and placing it onto others, shifting your focus from getting to giving. When we say giving in this context, we simply mean constantly and consistently providing immense value to others. Understanding that doing so is not only a more pleasant way of conducting business, it's the most financially profitable way as well. Not for any way out there, woo-woo, goody-good, magical, mystical reasons, but for very logical, rational reasons. When you're that person who can move from an I focus or me focus to an other focus, looking for ways to serve others, make their lives better, discover what they want, what they need, what they desire, help them solve and overcome their challenges, help bring them closer to happiness. When you can do that, people feel good about you. People want to get to know you. They like you. They trust you. They want to be in a relationship with you. They want to do business with you. They want to tell others about you. Okay. So now let's go back to what Zig said, right? You can have everything in life that you want if you will first, right, help other people get what they want. So if you can focus on them, and let's face it, it's got to be, and this is what Zig taught and understood so well, the focus must be on them. Why? Because, and I say this typically whenever I speak at sales conferences, okay, the first thing I'll say is, nobody's going to buy from you because you have a quota to meet. Okay. They're not going to buy from you because you need the money. You have a mortgage payment to meet. You want to send your kids to a good school. They're not going to buy from you even just because you're a really nice person. They're going to buy from you because they believe they will be better off by doing so than by not doing so. And in a free market-based economy, free market simply meaning no one's forced to do business with anyone else, right? They do so voluntarily. When you think about it, that's the only reason why anyone should buy from you or from me or from Zig or from anyone else. So what Zig was saying is, if you want to get what you want, if you want to get the results you want, you can only do it through helping other people get what they want. And that's selling. That's what selling is. Selling is simply discovering what the other person needs, wants, or desires and helping them to get it. And I think that's exactly what Zig was saying. That's why John David Mann, my awesome co-author of the Go Giver and the Go Giver series, why we say that money is simply an echo of value, right? Money is simply an echo of value. It's the thunder to value's lightning, which means the focus must be on the value you provide another human being. The money you receive is simply a natural result of the value you've provided. You can have everything in life you want if you'll just help enough other people get what they want. Zig Ziglar.
So beautifully said in your voice with the additional context around it. And I love that so much. And I want to make sure that we are highlighting this particular point for all of our audience, those that are watching and those that are listening. In my line of work, one of the things that I see often is that we're not asking the questions. We're not asking what our customers want. We are making assumptions that they want what I have.
Absolutely.
And let's spend time truly understanding what their needs are. And do I have the solution that can fulfill those needs?
Yeah. So Jeff Shore, one of today's great salespeople, sales professionals, and sales teachers and best-selling authors, he says most salespeople in the world are obsessed with solving the problem before they actually or are obsessed with providing the solution before they actually understand the problem. So my apologies to Jeff for mangling that his wonderful quote and lesson, but that really is, and as human beings, because we see the world from a certain viewpoint, namely our own set of beliefs, right? Our belief systems, we tend to believe that other people see the world basically the same way we do.
Right.
And it's not true. So when we talk about providing value to others, we need to first understand the difference between price and value. Price is a dollar figure. It's a dollar amount, right? It's finite. It is what it is. Value is the relative worth or desirability of a thing, of something, to the end user or beholder. In other words, what is it about this thing, this product, service, concept, features, benefits, what have you, that brings so much worth or value to another human being that they will willingly exchange their, whether it's time, money, what have you, for this? Okay. But here's what we've always got to understand as salespeople, and this is so important. Value is always in the eyes of the beholder. And that beholder is our prospective customer or client. It's not what we believe is of value about our product or service. It's not what we think they should believe is of value. It's what they believe is of value.
Such a powerful point. And you've obviously touched on the very first law of stratospheric success from the Go Giver. Before we go there, though, this wasn't your first book, and we're talking about relationships. We're talking about human relations. We're talking about how we engage with others, building rapport, and understanding what our current clients and potential prospects, what their needs are, right? And being able to fulfill those needs. So your first book, which came out in the 90s, was Endless Referrals. And that book really was a how-to book. It was a system, if you will, on how to build relationships. So just very briefly, if you could touch on Endless Referrals and how that came to be.
Yeah, well, that was written for salespeople and entrepreneurs who knew they had a great product or service and knew it brought fantastic value to others, but they perhaps weren't confident or comfortable with going out into their local communities and developing the kinds of relationships that would cause people to want to do business with them and or refer them to others. So Endless Referrals was, as you said, a system, right? The process of predictably achieving a goal, a system for being able to develop those kinds of relationships in a way that was very, very confident building and made you feel very comfortable, both you and the prospects that you would be meeting. It was based on an overarching premise, and that I guess has sort of been my calling card since that book, or since I've been speaking, which was actually even a little before that. And that is that all things being equal, people will do business with and refer business to those people they know, like, and trust. That's really what that was based on.
Okay, perfect. So I want to ask you, since we're just touching on that book, the topic of networking. There's many in our audience who are involved in different networking groups, different business groups. As you look over your body of work and your experience, what piece of advice would you give to, let's say, maybe a relatively new business owner who doesn't know a lot of people yet, is in a community where they're starting to get involved in maybe some networking events? What can they do? What should they be focused on when they go to a networking event? And how can they achieve the greatest level of success for themselves in networking?
Well, I think the first thing is to understand what networking is and what it isn't, because it's a term that has, been around for a long time, but I think is so convoluted in meaning, only in that it can mean different things to different people. So you say the word networking and you get people groaning, oh no, not networking, but they're not groaning because of what networking is. They're groaning because of what they think networking is, right? So many people even today have this idea in their mind. When they hear the word networking, they picture the stereotypical networking sales guy, right? The one who works the crowd, who meets people, backhands, glad hands, shakes hands, slaps hands, sticks a business card aggressively into people's faces and says, hey, give me a call, cut you a deal, right? Or something like that. And of course, that's not networking. I don't know what that is, but it's certainly not networking. So let's instead define networking as the cultivating of mutually beneficial give and take, or give and receive, win-win relationships. Again, networking is the cultivating of mutually beneficial give and take, or give and receive, win-win relationships. Now, the emphasis, of course, is on the giving part. What are you giving? You are giving value. You're giving value to that person from the moment you meet them. No, not through talking about your product or service or giving your elevator speech or trying to sell them your hat and so forth. No, not at all. It's simply by focusing on them, focusing on getting to know them, asking questions that make them feel good about themselves, that allow you to establish a relationship with this person that you can then follow up and follow through with in terms of cultivating that relationship. When we approach it that way, and there, by the way, back when I wrote Endless Referrals, gosh, I think there were like maybe 2 or 3 other networking books out there. Ann Bo's Is Your Networking, Susan Roan's How to Work a Room, and there might have been a couple others, and then mine, Endless Referrals. So there weren't a lot. Now there's tons of them, and they're all great. I mean, I read lots of them, and they're fantastic. And you've got someone like, Ivan Meisner, who founded BNI, Business Network International, has written about 15 of them, and he's probably the master of all in terms of, when it comes to this topic. And you've got so many people, so many men and women who've written so many wonderful books on networking. And the theme is pretty much the same with all of us. It's take the focus off yourself and focus on others, on how you can build relationships with others. Now, I would always start by understanding that when you go to this first networking meeting, okay, and it might be that stereotypical Chamber of Commerce networking exchange, or it might be a charity event. It might be some business social function held by, whomever in your town, and you have a great chance to meet some people. When you go to this meeting and you can know nobody there, it's okay. Okay. But you're going to see people, and you're going to see people who look approachable. You're going to see people who are surrounded by other people who are hanging on to their every word. And there's a good chance that that's a center of influence, someone you might want to meet. You might get there a little early and kind of help with the setup and just kind of get to know a few people who can maybe introduce you to some people. But the big thing is that you don't have to meet a lot of people at any one of these kinds of events. You'll meet a few people, and you'll engage with a few people. And when you do this, you'll place your focus on them. You'll understand that, to the degree that you can ask them questions about themselves, that's the degree you're going to establish a relationship. So may I share just a couple of questions for people to ask, new networkers or new business people to ask? Let's say you meet someone, his name is Gary. Gary sells copying machines, okay? And again, you met Gary because you were at the hors d'oeuvres table at the same time. You made eye contact. He saw you, you smiled, he smiled. You said, hi, and you said your name. He said, oh, I'm Gary Malashevsky. And you said, oh, what do you do, Gary? And Gary probably gave you his big elevator speech, because that's what people do, okay? When he asks you what you do, you just tell him just a quick word. I'm an accountant with so-and-so, or I sell real estate with so-and-so, or I'm an insurance broker with, just because right now, as far as, giving your big elevator speech, he doesn't care, right? He doesn't care. He cares about himself and his business. So there's always time, okay? So what you want to do is instead kind of go back to focusing on him. I have questions. I call these questions feel-good questions. Feel-good questions are simply questions. They're not salesy, prospecty, intrusive, invasive. They just feel good. Feel-good questions. They very quickly establish a rapport. And you might ask them, so Gary, how did you get started in the copying machine business? Or a little bit more elegant might be, how did you get started as an office products professional? Okay, and that's a question. It's not a slick question, not a clever question. In fact, it's a pretty mundane question when you think about it, right?
Right.
People love to answer that question. Why? Because you've just made them the star. You've made them the movie of the week. You've basically communicated that even though we've just met, I want to know more about you. I find you fascinating. I want to hear your story. How many people ask Gary to share his story about how he got into selling copying machines? No one.
Not enough.
His own family has never asked him to share his story. And here's you, who he's just met, who rather than like everybody else trying to sell him a hat, right? You're instead asking him to share his story. And he's going to love that. Now, a follow-up question, the second feel-good question might be, what do you enjoy most about your work? It probably sounds more like, wow, you must have had some fascinating experiences. What do you enjoy most about your work? And again, just a feel-good question, right? It flies on the face of so much traditional sales teaching, where immediately we're supposed to, find their pain, right? Reach into their heart and tear it out, right? So we can come to the rescue. But the relationship hasn't been established yet. Don't put that kind of pressure on yourself. And then he answers that question. Now you can then ask what I call the one key question that will separate you from everyone else, and that is to say, Gary, how can I know if someone I'm speaking with would be a good prospective client for you? Right? How can I know if someone I'm speaking with is a good customer for you? A good setup, a good frame into that question is, Gary, I always love connecting good people with other good people. Tell me, how can I know if someone I'm speaking with is a good client for you, or would make a good client for you, however you want to say it. And he's going to just be blown away by this. Now, when you can And by the way, if he's not in sales, but let's say has something like he's in the accounts receivable department, or he's in the engineer of a company, or he's the CEO or something, where a prospect, remember, it's always values in the eyes of the beholder, where that wouldn't be of value to him. Same questions, same feel good questions. The key question might be, how can I know if someone I'm speaking with would be a good contact or connection for you, or someone you'd like to meet? Okay. Now, at this place, this event where you are, you might see him a little while later, and while you're talking to someone else, you kind of wave him over and introduce him to this other person who you've been having the same conversation with. Give them each a nice, edifying introduction of one another. And see, you're doing this. You're the host. You're all of a sudden becoming a center of influence. Now, once you leave this meeting, my suggestion is you send a personalized, handwritten thank you note to Gary. And it simply says, "Hi, Gary. Thank you. It was a pleasure meeting you at the whatever charity function. What a nice group of people. If I can ever refer business your way, I certainly will. Best regards." Sign your name. Put it in an envelope, handwrite the address, regular stamp, send it out. Boom. Okay, these are the things you can do that most other people won't be doing. And in a very quick period of time, you'll find yourself to have a really good growing network.
Love that. Such fantastic advice.
Thank you.
And applicable. So those that are listening right now or watching this, take that advice whenever you're at a networking event and put it into practice. That's, to me, is about being others focused, right? Looking for the give, not focusing on the ask, because we haven't established rapport or given value yet.
Right.
So I love that. So let's segue then into the Go-Giver. Such an amazing, powerful book. And for those who haven't read it, it's not a long book, but what it is, it's a very powerful, very meaningful book. So why don't we, if we could, let's go through the 5 laws of stratospheric success. And if we could give an example of how each of those laws applies to today in a real world situation that either you've experienced yourself or at least one that you've been involved in or have heard about.
Yeah. So the Go-Giver is a business parable. It was co-authored with John David Mann, who's a wonderful, fantastic writer. I'm much more of a how-to guy, as you can probably tell. And there's 5 laws. We talked about the first law, the law of value, and that's understanding that the entire purpose is to provide this person with such a unique experience. As a customer, but also on the way to becoming a customer. So from the first time you meet this person, whether it's an inbound or an outbound call or contact, through the relationship building process, the follow-up and follow through, the sales process, the referral process, it's always making sure that this person feels special, they're treated special, and that the experience they receive is much more than just the intrinsic value of the product or service, which of course has to be great, but that the entire experience is just so wonderful that they believe that they have received more in value, relative worth, or desirability than what they paid, while of course you make a very healthy profit. So law number 2 now takes us to the next step. This is the law of compensation. And this says your income is determined by how many people you serve and how well you serve them. So where law number 1 is all about the, give more in value than what you take in payment. Law number 2 tells us that the more people whose lives you touch with the exceptional value you provide, the more money with which you'll be rewarded. So where law number 1, law of value, it represents your potential income. Law number 2, the number of lives you impact, equals your actual income. That's why referrals are so very, very important, because you're able to see more people in less time. You're able to sell on high value rather than low price. You go in on borrowed influence, borrowed trust, or vicarious experience, and referred prospects are already of the mindset that that's how you do business, since that's how they met you. So they're much more likely to easily refer you to others. Law number 3 is the law of influence, which says your influence is determined by how abundantly you place other people's interests first. No, this does not mean that you're a doormat or a martyr or self-sacrificial in any way. Absolutely not. When we say place other people's interests first, we simply mean understanding, as Joe learned from several of the mentors in the story, that, and as you and I discussed earlier, the golden rule of business, which says all things being equal, people will do business with and refer business to those people they know, like, and trust. Well, there's no faster, more powerful, or more effective way to elicit those feelings toward you in others than by genuinely moving from that I focus, that focus on yourself, to that other focus, that focus on bringing immense value to others. Or as Sam, one of the mentors, advised Joe, to make your win all about the other person's win. Law number 4, the law of authenticity, says the most valuable gift you have to offer is yourself. In this part of the story, Deborah Davenport shared a very important lesson, and that is all the skills in the world, the sales skills, technical skills, people skills, as important as they are, and they are indeed very, very important, they're also all for naught if you don't come at it from your true, authentic core. But when you do, when you show up as yourself day after day, week after week, month after month, people feel good about you. They feel comfortable with you. They feel safe with you. Why wouldn't they? They know who they're getting. They trust your character. Law number 5, the law of receptivity, says the key to effective giving is to stay open to receiving. Well, this really means nothing more than understanding that, sure, you breathe out, but you also have to breathe in. It's not one or the other. It's both. We breathe out carbon dioxide, in oxygen, right? You breathe out, which is giving. You breathe in, which is receiving. Despite the negative messages we receive from the world around us regarding money, regarding business, regarding prosperity, regarding abundance, horrible, horrible messages. The fact is, giving and receiving are not opposite concepts. You're not a giver or a receiver. You're a giver and a receiver. But what you know, because they're the laws of life, the laws of economics, the laws of human nature, the giving comes first, right? We plant before we harvest. We sow before we reap. We give before we receive. So as long as you give value, right? Law number 1, give value to many, place their interests first. Remember, they're not buying for your reasons, but for their reasons. You show up congruently and authentically. Now you've created that benevolent context to receive, and receive in abundance. And as long as you allow yourself to receive, you will. You'll receive in abundance. You'll receive an abundance of kindness, an abundance of friendship, an abundance of love, an abundance of money, an abundance of new business, an abundance of referrals. You just need to allow yourself to receive that.
Beautiful. So amazing. And thank you for going through that. And you and I will have a separate conversation on this at some point, because I personally have struggled. I've learned a lot over the years, but I personally have struggled with a couple of those, and the work continues today.
Absolutely. Sure.
So this book, and I wanted everyone to be aware of this, which we're going to link in the show notes, but the book has sold over 1 million copies. It's been translated into 30 different languages, and it's a Wall Street Journal and BusinessWeek bestseller. So make a point to go out and read this book, but more importantly, read and apply the lessons in it. It'll change your life. So before we wrap up, please share with us where we can connect with you, where we can consume your content, and then also where we can find out more about some of the things that you have going on today that are new and different.
Well, thank you. That's very kind. The easiest place is just Burg, BURG.com. And they can scroll down and get the first chapter or excerpts of any of the books they'd like, and then decide if they like it. They can always click through to Amazon. We also have a really wonderful membership. Actually, we call it a mentorship community, an online mentorship community called the Go Giver Success Alliance. And it's just a whole bunch of successful people. We get together every Wednesday via Zoom, although we also on the platform, the Mighty Networks platform, we actually have 24/7 access. But it's the highlight is our Zoom on Wednesday mornings. But it's just people getting together, successful people who all do business and live life the Go Giver way, sharing with each other, learning with each other, strategizing with each other, connecting with each other, and just building great relationships. And so it's a lot of fun. So I invite people, when you're scrolling down, you'll see on Burg.com, you'll see a picture of 4 people at a coffee shop. And you'll know, of course, if you've read the book, that's Rachel's Famous Cafe. If you haven't read the book, it won't make much sense to you, but you'll get the idea. You just click on that and you can listen to the messages about it.
Love it. Fantastic. And we're going to link to all of this in the show notes, because I know everyone's going to be excited to not only pick up a copy of the book, but to learn more about the mentorship program and really just jump into your world and try to learn as much as they can from you. So thank you for that. So here's my final question to you. What are you adding or eliminating from your life to live more fulfilled and with greater purpose?
Well, I mean, I think the things that we're doing, my business partner, Kathy Tagenel, and I, we have the different aspects of the business we enjoy. I'm still speaking, although most of my speaking now is virtual. When I speak at conferences, it's mostly virtual, though a few, I'm still on the road. So as long as those remain fun, I'm 63. So I'm pretty much at this point only doing things that are fun. So as long as those remain fun, I'll continue to do that. But we also have an international team of certified Go Giver speakers and coaches. We love that. And of course, our Go Giver Success Alliance is sort of our crown jewel at this point. We just have so much fun with that and with all the people that we get to meet on those. So that's kind of, as far as what I cut out, basically I cut out anything that I don't feel really serves. That Dan Kennedy, who was a great direct response marketer for many years, he had a saying that I used to have posted right on my computer, and it was a question. It was, is what I'm about to do right now the highest and best use of my time? And if it isn't, I don't do it. Now, I always am polite, respectful, tactful when I tell someone I can't do it. I think that's very important. People often misinterpret a go giver as, oh, you have to just do things for everybody and you have to. Of course not. Absolutely not. But what a go giver would do is make sure that the other person always feels honored and always feels welcome and always feels, good about genuinely good about themselves. But the fact is, we do have to say no most of the time, or we'll be doing things we really have no right doing and shouldn't be doing, and that don't serve.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. And Bob, thank you so much for taking some time to share your wisdom and your knowledge, share some information about your books, what's been going on in your world. The Go Giver is, again, such an amazing book, and it has changed lives and will continue to. And it's amazing when you look back and you think about when the book was written and how it's still so relevant, actually as relevant today as ever. And I love that. I love that for you. And I love that for all those who are consuming it and applying it. So thank you so much for joining us today.
My absolute pleasure, Jay. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And for all of you, thank you so much for watching and listening. And please take a moment to subscribe, rate, and leave us a review, and to enjoy more episodes and to learn how Jay Shear Business Consulting can help build a solid foundation for your service-based business. All you have to do is visit jshearbusinessconsulting.com. And until next time, keep learning and growing, study and apply the laws in the Go Giver, and we'll see you on the next Business Minds Coffee Chat. Take care.
Jay Shear.
Jay Shear.
Jay Shear.
Jay Shear.
Business Consultant. Jay Shear. Jay Shear Business Consulting.